We're going to begin with telling you a little story. The story is about an entrepreneur who started in the sanitation business, about the time that it required to really reach this stage. The story is about me. Its story is about a guy who decided to get into the toilet business about 22 years ago, and I had absolutely no clue as to what the future held, but I was very sure about one thing, that my idea was to create an impact to the lives of the millions of people in my country. I had the opportunity of working in North America, and in fact this is where I realized the importance of sanitation and hygiene, but I chose not to stick around like many of my friends and colleagues who have made a wonderful life there as well. But I decided to come to India and start a venture in sanitation. It was not really on the wish list of most people to work in the sanitation business, and 20 years ago it really was very, very different, especially in a country like India. Of course, today you have a Prime Minister that has given a huge impetus to the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, and since 2014 it's become almost like a national agenda for clean India and sanitation and good restrooms and hygiene, better hygiene for people. But back in the day, about 22 years ago, this was not the case, and people laughed at me. You know, when I told people that I was running a toilet business, they laughed at me. And I even remember a time that when I set up my first toilet, you know, a lot of my friends who happened to come for that wedding that I had put my toilets up for, they thought I was off my rocker, that I was now selling toilets after doing an MBA. So there were a lot of learnings along the way, and we slowly grew. I had a very clear agenda that innovation and providing improved hygiene to people in India and quality was on the top of the agenda. And we persevered, we worked very hard. In 2009, I met a gentleman by the name of Vinit Rai. Vinit Rai is the main brain behind Intellicap and Avishkar, and he runs a private equity venture capital fund in Mumbai, actually several of them. And he saw the opportunity in this space, and they invested a certain amount of money in our company. And that was, I think, the starting point, because, you know, in a toilet business in India, and considering the banking system, it was not very easy to get funds. So at that point in time, almost up to my underwear, I was actually completely given away to the bank. So I couldn't raise any more money. And Vinit Rai was a blessing in disguise. And when he came by, invested in the company actually grew almost 2, 3, 4-fold in a period of about 2 to 3 years. And in 2013, the Responsibility, which is one of the largest impact funds based out of Switzerland, they found us to be a match for their investment, and they invested with us. So we had 2 large impact funds that are invested with us, and we grew since 2013, and from portable toilets to cleaning of restrooms to innovating the T-bus, which you have right here, and working with a lot of people in the bottom of the pyramid, creating solutions, creating ideas, and innovation and improved hygiene being on the top of the agenda. However, we always wanted to be like a corporate, and we wanted to create profit, because without profit you cannot grow. And profit has always been something like a sort of not a very nice word in the non-profit sector, where people looked at you like, oh, you're making money out of this? Well, you know, if you don't make money out of it, you can't grow. And to scale, you need to grow. To scale, you need money. And we realized that this is the best way, and we would, whatever money that we got, we put back into the business. And that's how the company became stronger, it became bigger. I'm very happy and very proud to stand here before you and talk to you about my little journey. We're going to make a big announcement day after tomorrow on Thursday. Our company has been partially bought out by a very large business group. I would let the the executive director, the joint managing director of that company, speak to you when he comes on stage. But we're going to make an announcement for that day after tomorrow. And my association with the Toilet Board Coalition is has been for the last 3 years actually. And I met Cheryl at Sankalp 3 years ago. And during Sankalp, we had a chat, and she was like, I need to go to South Bombay from JW Marriott near the airport. So I said, okay, I'll give you a ride. And I was like, I'm going to take her like 1.5, 2 hours across the town. And there were like a couple of other guys with us. But those 1.5, 2 hours were the most productive 2 hours that I got with Cheryl ever since. I think she's been so busy. But those 2 hours, I convinced Cheryl that we could do a great lot of work together and actually create a sector, actually create a business sector out of sanitation and start off with the city of Pune. The city of Pune is synonymous with culture, with education, sanitation models, business. In fact, it's the largest business hub in this part of the world, in India especially. And we have the best and largest manufacturing companies like Mercedes-Benz, we have Volkswagen, and of course we have Bharat Forge, Kirloskar Group, which are the local MNCs that we have in the city. It's a safe city, it's a it's a big city that's now very conducive for business models, for trying out new ideas, new innovations. And the Toilet Board Coalition and us wanted to start and wanted to actually do something in Pune. We did a lot of efforts with the municipal corporation, with smart cities, and today I stand before you. It's almost like a dream come true for us, and we've been working on this for almost 2 years to bring all you guys, all the luminaries of the sanitation and hygiene world together over here, all under one roof. So thank you very much for coming here. I will not take too much of time talking about the laurels and the work that we've done, but I'm just feeling very proud to tell you that there are many more people like me which the TBC is supporting as a part of their cohort, and many large companies over here. So I would encourage them to have a look at the marketplace, talk to all these people, get them together and see what we can do best to scale up and build this $60-odd billion economy that's awaiting and that's just waiting to open over here. I would like to invite a few people this evening to talk about their association with the Toilet Board and also about what they think about the business and about sanitation in general. To begin with, I would like to invite Mr. Prabhat Pani. Mr. Prabhat Pani is the senior advisor at Tata Trust, and he's also a steering committee member of the Toilet Board. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Rajeev. Good evening. I know some of you are jet-lagged, but surely the enthusiasm levels can be a little better. Good evening. That's much better. Rajeev has just extended a very warm welcome on behalf of the Toilet Board Coalition, which I second. But I also want to extend a warm welcome on behalf of the organization I represent on the steering committee of the TBC, which is the Tata Trust, as well as our host for the evening, which is the Tata Management Training Center. Before I talk about the India connection, which is what Cheryl wants me to talk about, I felt I should talk a little bit about the nostalgic feeling I'm getting coming here. A little more than 37 years back, when I started work, I joined the Tatas, and my first week of induction was held right here. I was in these classes, and I was staying in some of these rooms, playing tennis, and a game called croquet, which used to be played on the lawns right here. And coincidentally, while I was searching for a shirt to wear, I actually picked up a shirt which was given to me as part of one of the other training programs that I came here for. A little while earlier, Cheryl and I went to meet the director, and he saw this, and it says it's a 9th batch of, I think, some emerging leaders training or something. And he said that the 33rd batch is undergoing the training right now, and he insisted that I come right here tomorrow and speak to them about the journey. So it's fairly nostalgic in that sense. Just to mention, this structure here is 102 years young, and the architect, George Whitted, is the person who has actually built, he was an architect. He is the person who's designed the Gateway of India, the Prince of Wales Museum, and the iconic Bombay House, which is the headquarters of the Tatas. So there is a fair amount of history right here. Also to mention, the director was telling me that last year they conducted 162 training programs and 50,000 man-hours of training was imparted in these premises. So it's a pretty historical location, and also history in the sense of the first time they have an organization like the Toilet Board Coalition coming and holding an exhibition and an event here. So you're part of history. Talking of history, I must also mention to you that right behind this building is actually the Tata Archives. It has got 1.5 million documents, physical and digital. And I was just looking at a couple of documents which they have. The first annual report of the first company that was set up by the founder of the Tata Group, Jamshedji Tata, a company called Central India Spinning, Weaving and Manufacturing Company Limited. And can you believe the year the annual report came out? 1875. That document is sitting there. There's another document which links into Tata Trust, and I thought I should share that with you. The oldest part of Tata Trust is the J.N. Tata Endowment, which actually provided scholarships to deserving Indians to go and study abroad and then come back and hopefully do something good for the country. In 1892, the first of the endowments, and it's a document which is signed by Jamshedji Tata himself. Can you believe it? It was given to a lady, Dr. Kama, Freeney Kama. She went to Dublin and to Edinburgh to learn about midwifery and diseases related to women and children, and came back and served this country for many years longer. So Pune has great things, as Rajeev spoke about, culture, eating places, which you didn't talk about, and many others. But if you still want to pop in and see some of the stuff in the Tata Archives, you're more than welcome. Now let me talk a little bit about the India connection. A little more than 3 years back, when Cheryl and I met, and she explained to me what the Toilet Board Coalition was all about, the Tata Trust, through the Tata Water Mission, was actually aiming to do something much bigger in the space of sanitation. And all the things that she spoke about really kind of resonated with what we were intending to do. The only condition that I put upon her was that because the bulk of the work that is done by the trust, in fact all the work that is done by the trust in the field is in India, I said you need to make India centric to whatever you are doing. And I must say, it's a delight to be here about 3 odd years later, and less than that period from the time that we joined the steering committee in terms of what has been achieved. It helped very clearly that the Clean India mission was halfway through and the government was looking for partners, and amongst many partners, even the Toilet Board Coalition has ended up being one of them. The Pune project, about which the Smart Sanitation City project, about which you will hear later, is clearly one of them. The work that has been done in the tea sector, which provides opportunities for sanitation to move into allied spaces of agriculture and possibly health, that was taken up in India. A whole host of accelerators as part of the accelerator programs have been from India. And what better than having an event of this size, this stature, and people flying in from virtually across the world, coming into this city of Pune to celebrate what the Toilet Board Coalition has been able to achieve. Great work by TBC and great work by Cheryl and team. Thank you very much. Enjoy your time here, and I'm sure it'll lead to even bigger and larger things, with TBC being right at the center of it all. Bye.
Thank you, Prabhat. After that, we would like to invite upon stage Erin McCusker. Erin is the Chief of Strategy at Sato, which is a part of the LIXIL Corporation, one of the large Japanese multinational companies. And she is also the chair at the Toilet Board Coalition. Welcome.
I'm a little bit shorter than the previous speakers, so can you hear me okay, or do I need to use this as well? Good. Excellent. Well, thank you, Rajeev. Thank you, Prabhat. Thank you to Tata Trust, certainly, for letting us use this wonderful space outside as well. And thank you to the City of Pune and to all of our sponsors who enable the Toilet Board Coalition to offer programs such as the Summit and many of the other things that we do. I personally got to know the Toilet Board Coalition from afar about 3 years ago, but over the last year, I've been able to engage in a much deeper level, and I think getting to know this team closely, you start to see the passion, not only of the members, but of the Secretariat, of the cities where we work, and of our entrepreneurs. And so it's certainly been an honor for me to add my welcome as the new chair, and to step into this role and to help guide the next 2 years of the strategy with Cheryl's leadership. Over the time of getting to know the Toilet Board Coalition at a deeper level, I've certainly been in awe, I think, of what they've been able to accomplish. If you think about this event, we have over 400 individuals representing a very wide range of organizations. That is quite a far cry from the original 15 founding members of the Toilet Board Coalition. And I think it shows the potential for us to make the message of the sanitation economy and the circular economy relevant, impactful, and how easily we can start to communicate it more broadly. I think in many ways I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, because you are all here because you see the potential of the sanitation and circular economy, but you also know that it takes partnerships. We cannot do this alone. And that the business mindset, the private sector mindset that Rajeev so eloquently spoke of, is what makes it sustainable and is what's going to actually enable us to be around to provide solutions over the long term. Take the TBC Accelerator. I don't know about anyone else who was in the member meeting, but I was just completely energized by our 9 companies in the new Accelerator. It's one of our largest cohorts to date, it's the most diverse, and we're starting to actually cover more of the value chain and in more geographic areas. That's a sign of progress. It's just really exciting, and I believe there'll be more about that in the later sessions. We've already engaged 19 businesses previously over 4 cohorts, and those companies, not even including the new ones in our cohort, have impacted 2.6 million people. A big focus of our strategy has been scale. And I think the economics that were spoken about earlier, the ability to have impact and make history, really come from actually achieving scale. And so just the idea that even those accelerated cohorts are starting to achieve those types of numbers, again, shows the potential that we have. At LIXIL, we have a set of 3 core behaviors. And one of those behaviors is experiment and learn. And other than the Sato team, I think truly embodying that on a daily basis in all aspects of our business, I see you all out there, I've been really encouraged to see that in the Toilet Board Coalition. The last 4 years, the first 4 years of our existence, was an opportunity to experiment and learn. What did we learn from those 4 years? Cheryl, under her leadership, we've cast a very wide net. I think some would say very, very wide net into space, into physics, into biohealth, and places I don't think we ever thought toilets would go or the toilet economy could go. But that has really enabled us to stretch our thinking, to think about opportunities in a new way, and to engage a much broader set of companies than I think we ever would have before. The key principle of experiment and learn is that you then take that somewhere. So you have to then reflect on what have you learned? What changes are you going to make? And at the Toilet Board Coalition, we're starting to now look forward. We're looking ahead, and we're focusing. I don't think there could have been a better time for this type of conversation to happen. We're in a global conversation about urbanization, population growth, climate, sustainability, that business finally understands they have purpose, at which point we say, welcome to the conversation, already in progress. But this point, this momentum of the broader community is something that we can capture and we can get ahead of. I think one particular fact that stood out in the latest report to me is if you think about when, Prabhat, when you started work 37 years ago, the global population was somewhere near 4.5 billion people. In just this short time today, our global population is 7.7 billion people. And that actually does translate into 3.8 trillion liters of resource that are currently untapped or underutilized. And the best thing about toilet resources is as that population may grow, so do the resources. So how do we start to think about, instead of where in other resources we have water, we have energy, we have food constraints, we now have a growing resource with population that is an opportunity. It's a resource that we can use, we can tap, and it's not constrained by our growing population. To me, this was just fascinating. My team and colleagues over cocktails, I was giving them this with excitement. It's a novel concept, and I think the conversations that you have the opportunity to have this week with this group of partners is how do you start to think about that for your business? How do you start to think about that for the communities in which your businesses operate and the communities in which you live? And how do we start to think about the ways to work together to capture that opportunity and translate it into meaningful business opportunity so that they're around and those resources can be tapped to fuel our future well beyond when each of us are sitting around the room. So I challenge each of you to try and find one thing, one conversation, one fact that you can bring back into your business or into your communities to use, and to then take that action and snowball it with different meetings, with catalyzing action. And I think we can use this summit, the first Global Sanitation Economy Summit, to actually start to catalyze a much broader conversation about the role that the sanitation and circular economy can play. Thank you very much, and I look forward to talking to all of you.
Thank you, Erin. I think that was very, very insightful, and I think, yes, all of us should really look at doing that one conversation here, and it's going to go a really, really long way. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to now invite on stage Mr. Amit Kalyani. Mr. Amit Kalyani is the Joint Managing Director of Bharat Forge and also the Kalyani Group. Amit also sits on the board of various companies like the Global Advisory and the Global Team of Capgemini, and also Schaeffler. Amit's company has been one of the pioneers and a very large business group in Pune, which has become a large multinational with operations in not only in India but also in the United States, in Europe, and many parts of the world. Amit has also gracefully been a key sponsor to this event, and thanks to him, we're here and we're enjoying the Toilet Board Coalition Summit, and we really thank him for his efforts. Amit, could you please come on stage and talk about
Thanks, Rajeev. Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome all of you to Pune as well, since I am a born and bred Puneite. And it's a wonderful occasion to meet so many people who are so passionate about changing lives and destinies of so many hundreds of millions of people who are deprived of basic necessities around the world. First of all, I must confess that I'm not an expert or very knowledgeable in the field of sanitation or in this event that we are here for, but I'm very passionate about giving back to society and improving the lot of the people that are in our cities, country, and in the villages of India. And let me tell you a little bit about why I believe sanitation is very important for uplifting society and for the development of India. And this is a very tangible example and a first-hand learning that we had. At the Kalyani Group, we believe in giving back to society meaningfully. And under the Swachh Bharat mission, when the Prime Minister launched the Swachh Bharat mission, we adopted about 30 municipal schools in and around our various plants, and specifically targeted girls' schools, where we found that the dropout rate of adolescent girls was in excess of 70%. And we built toilets in all these schools. And not only did we build the toilets, but we also put in place the process to manage them and make sure that they run clean and efficiently and effectively. And in 2 years, we found that the dropout rate had reduced by 93%. Now, if you can get young women to get educated without the stigmas associated with growing up, and I have 2 daughters myself, and whenever I think of this, I always put them, in the reference frame, and I think, what would I do for my daughters? And it's abhorrent that in a country like ours, in a city like Pune, which is, a metropolis with 8 million people, with almost every global multinational in the world present here, that less than 10 kilometers from where we are sitting, there are schools where, 60-70% of the girls would either drop out or be forced to drop out when they reach puberty. And this little lesson taught me that how impactful this could be. And then I know Rajeev and happened to talk to him, and then through Rajeev got to meet Cheryl, and was completely blown away by both of their passion and knowledge and just the kind of impact this whole project could have on an economy like ours and on a country like ours. And of course, I read the report the Tata Trust had put out about the impact of the economy, and it only told me that there are few figures that stuck in my mind. One was, it's a $62 billion opportunity, but it's not really about making money. It's about each of those dollars generates $4 of value add for the economy. So the sanitation economy can actually add $250 billion to India's GDP. And it's a sector which has gone from being ignored to taboo to now becoming something that we can talk about, something that we can address, and that has become mainstream. If you look at either the Swachh Bharat mission or the Ayushman Bharat mission, one is Clean India, the other one is Healthy India. I think both of those get addressed by what the Toilet Board Coalition is trying to do. It's cleanliness and hygiene that affect health. And if you look at India, we have a myriad of problems. I think anyone who's been to Delhi and come here, you can breathe clean air and you feel the impact of the quality of air. But how about basic necessities of life, like clean water, like sanitation facilities? I mean, a country like India, where we now have more mobile phone access than toilet access, it's a crying shame. And we cannot develop as a country without inclusive growth. So the basic necessities of life are things that cannot be taken for granted or deprived to 60-70% of society. And that's where I feel that an approach of scale and manufactured solutions, or an industrial approach to providing solutions through scale, through distributed manufacturing and distributed circular economy, can have a very significant and meaningful impact. I think hygiene and sanitation are issues which are causing problem even in water, and waterborne diseases and waterborne pathogens are increasing at an alarming level in India. If you see the disease statistics for last year, diseases caused by waterborne pathogens and other diseases have claimed more than 1 million lives last year, and this is increasing. What we see as an opportunity is a business or a kind of approach to this, to provide a solution where you do well by doing good. So you have a whole triple bottom line approach where it's good for society, it's good for your environment, and it's good financially. But you cannot compromise on any one of these. So therefore you need to bring in science, technology and innovation. You need to bring in a network effect where you have a lot of different agencies which have a stake in providing a solution and to benefit from the solution, not just as a service but also economic benefit. Our idea is to provide a distributed manufacturing and a distributed service for this kind of a service across India, and we want to start through our CSR initiatives and through various government, whether it is state, city, municipality, where right from schools, low-income housing, chawls and large densely populated areas can be provided with clean quality toilets which work with minimal water and minimal impact on the environment. And we also use a lot of the technologies that one sees here to generate either energy or whatever other waste to wealth byproducts through this, and provide the whole circular economy effect through the sanitation economy. So ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, I'm a newbie at this, but our intention is to do something which is beneficial to all the stakeholders here, and we look forward to getting to know more about this technology, this field, through our interactions with those knowledgeable people here. And you'll find that the people at the Kalyani Group are good at a few things. We're good at manufacturing, we're good at innovation, and we're especially good at training people. So these are the skills that we will use in order to scale up this business and deliver the maximum impact that's possible. Once again, thank you so much for being here in Pune and in India for this fantastic conference. And Cheryl and your team, Venu and everyone here has done a phenomenal job of putting this together. I also have to thank Rajeev for getting me hooked and selling this concept to me and making me excited about it. And I hope that we can meaningfully impact the many 100 million lives that are in need of better quality of life in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amit. We'll be looking forward to your advice and guidance. The Kalyani Group is also going to be one of our India chapter members as well, the founder members, and we look forward to their support. Next, I would like to have on stage Mr. Rajendra Jagtap, who is the CEO of Pune Smart City. Mr. Jagtap.
A very good evening and welcome to the city of Pune. As it has been rightly said, we are an historic city with a very good cultural background. A city over a period of time was also the administrative capital for the erstwhile Peshwa rulers, and during the colonial era has come up as a defense establishment town. With the coming of independence, we could see a lot of impetus on development of education, industry, and lately at the end of the 20th century, we could see that the city came up as a good IT hub in India. But while doing so, the city, which at one moment of time was a pensioner's paradise, a city which was quite sleepy and quite distinct and different, grew very rapidly. We could see a decadal growth of almost 60 to 70% for the city, and this has its own impact on the demand and supply side, where we could see the infrastructure that was potentially looked for the city could not sustain and survive to the incoming population of migrants vis-a-vis whatever natural growth we envisaged for the city. Our development plans, which we usually put in place for a period of 20 years, went haywire, and we could see that gradually the city was grasping with a lot of problems like the urban India component. even if we try to develop and added in a lot of component on behalf of the administrative side in form of the municipal corporation which is in place, which looks into a lot of needs and necessities of the city, which we're talking about necessarily, be it with respect to water, basic administration, roads, transportation, development, plans, and even taking care of our waste in form of sanitation, that is the wet waste that we usually take out through the STP plants, and lastly we talk about the solid waste and other areas. But while doing so, with my stint earlier for 5 years as the Additional Municipal Commissioner in Pune and the last 2 odd years with the Pune Smart City, we could see that while we are looking towards a futuristic growth and trying to inculcate and put in a lot of resources, both from the city side and whatever we can compel and collect from outside, and lot of infrastructure development, the total amount or the total impetus or the interest area input of sanitation is not something which is of very high interest or resonance that we can see. Say we have the metro coming up with almost 12,000 plus crores of investment in the city. We have the area of transportation where we'll be investing close to 2,000 odd crores. When you talk about roads per se, they themselves eat close to about 500 crores annually for addition of new roads and maintenance of whatever exists. That is a road length of almost 1,700 kilometers that we talk in the city of Pune of 350 square kilometers area that we live in, for a population for the city of about 45 lakhs, that is about 4 million. And when we talk about the total suburban area of Pune, Pimpri-Chinchwad and the PMRDA, it crosses almost 1 crore plus. So that's a huge population, a huge network that we're talking about, where we keep on struggling. When we're thinking about that, the area of redistribution of water, we are spending close to 3,500 odd crores for having a 24/7 water supply for distribution, which again comes from the city coffers and the municipal bonds that we are trying to collect from the market. But when we talk about sanitation per se, addressing our waste, we had to rely upon a JICA scheme with a soft funding that came in from Japan and the support from the central government to take this thing forward. Out of our 10 existing sewage treatment plants, about 5 of them came under the National Urban Renewal Mission that happened 10 years back, in the last 10 years, and our addition of another 10 sewage treatment plants under the JICA scheme is something that is happening at present. So the amount of funds that usually go from our side for the treatment of STP is something which is an area of neglect that we can very well understand. And why it is essential is, where we receive about 1,150 mld of water on a daily basis, the amount of treatment capacity that we have put in is about 550 odd mld of sewage treatment plants. Close to 300 mld of sewage even today goes into the river untreated, and that is where JICA and other factors come into place. And the necessity overall at the city level of sewage treatment plant is something which is quite acute. The other areas that we talk about is the sanitation that we can provide for the citizens in the public spaces. There's a big demand supply gap which is existing, and we have a big shortfall with respect to women toilet that we realized. We tried to overcome and overdo, where we had Rajeev who tied up with us, and we went in for the tea toilet that you will all be seeing. But again, an initiative which we could sustain for only 10 odd, with the support that came up under CSR and from various industries that we could put in place. Besides this, there were attempts under the smart city that we tried to do in, but the overall smart city plan, which came up through a wider citizen engagement, again set aside and mere amount of 9 crores out of a total 1,000 crore outlay for sanitation for the city, but that's for a period of 5 years. But while doing so, again, since a lot of physical infra was being developed by the city of Pune, we tried to intervene and bring in a technological intervention that could happen to assess, understand, and make the overall sanitation environment in the city lead into a different kind of an environment and a situation. And while doing so, what we did was when we established the integrated command and control center under the city of Pune, in the last 2.5 years of our engagement with the Toilet Board Coalition, where Cheryl and we had Mr. Agarwal who actively participated, went through, and we could see that integrating and correlating all these toilets, getting the feedbacks of citizens, putting them onto the dashboard through our command and control center, assessing this data and understanding the pulse of the city on a day-to-day basis was something which was quite useful, based on which we could interact, understand what the city required and needed in the future. Tagging of all public toilets within the city and putting it through in form of an app where they can search the nearest available public toilet was something which was again needed. Yes, there is a shortfall of public toilets, but maintaining these public toilets also was an essential part for the whole thing. And while doing so, when the smart city of Pune tried in and went ahead for establishment of 30 good quality smart toilets, while preparation of the RFP, we had the overall support which came from the TBC, wherein we looked at not just the toilet that comes up as a physical infra, but how environment friendly it is, how accessible it is, how we can maintain it in the long term, and how it comes up as a good business venture. So toilet which comes attached with kind of a cafeteria or a business establishment where there's a win-win for both the person who is manning it and running it was something which was envisaged, and we could see that we had a lot of support that came in and participation, especially from the startups that were existing in various parts of India. It's a process which is under implementation, and we are hopeful that in the coming year we may be able to come up with a very different kind of a model of public toilets that come up, especially in the Aund Banewaledi area, which gradually gets replicated. Another area of intervention that the TBC and Smart City could come together was again quite interesting, pertaining to the sewage treatment plant. We at the Pune Smart City were again keen and were thinking about having a different kind of an initiative with respect to recycling and reusing this water. What we see that, like the population of the city is increasing, there's a demand on a lot of natural raw water that is there upstream in various dams. But these dams at one moment of time were built in for the need and necessity of the rural hinterland, which is agriculture based, as well as the industries that had come up almost over a period of the last 60 to 80 years. And the increasing population had put in a demand of taking this water intake for the drinking thirst of the city and their other needs. And the increasing demand had created a kind of competition among the urban need of the domestic population, the commercial needs of the industry, as well as the agricultural needs. And to overcome and look into these aspects is, for the first time, any city in India which has not gone forward was we looked at recycling this water supply on a 30 MLD plant, where we are trying to reuse that water within the city of Pune. And while doing so, nowhere else we had come across in India of similar kind of project. The other two projects which existed in places like Gujarat and Tamil Nadu, that is Chennai, was where the city waste water was utilized for the use of industry with some partial kind of a treatment that was available. But here we wanted to put in a kind of treatment where the water could be recycled and reused for gardening purposes, construction purposes, washing of vehicles and other uses which is there. And if we are successful in this whole venture, we're talking about 30 MLD of water, which is close to having one of the 4 dams which stores the water for an annual needs, is something which comes out of just one plant. So imagine we're talking about existing 10 plants and another 10 we add. If we are able to recycle and gradually move towards that direction, probably our demand and the needs of the city and our dependence upon this water supply goes down considerably. So again, we out of those expression of interest, we had almost 9 different agencies, 6 of them coming from abroad who participated in this whole venture. There are few changes in the policies that have to be reintroduced for utilization of this water, especially like there's a demand which we look towards cooling towers in IT hubs in Banewaledi and Hinjewadi, which will be useful. So there are multiple elements of engagement with the smart city has been able to do, and I can see that there are upcoming opportunities, especially with the TBC and their team coming here of visiting our command and control center to look at what we have started and initiated here. And we'll be very much looking forward to engagements of other elements like the termites, which talk about sensing and getting knowledge of about the disease formation or the content and everything in public toilets, which may help us to come for a much more predictive kind of a modeling in the city in future. I again welcome you all and hope that you have a pleasant stay and engagement during your interaction here in the city of Pune. And being a part of Pune for the last 3 years, we're hopeful that the TBC and the city of Pune will create a different kind of an impact in the environment of sanitation in the whole country at place. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Jagtap. Mr. Jagtap has been a huge supporter of the toilet board and the work that we've done in Pune. And thank you very much, sir. I'd like to call on stage Sue Coates. She's the Executive Director of Water and Sanitation Supply Collaborative Council, WSSCC, which is a part of the United Nations initiative. Welcome, Sue.
Good evening. I'm really very delighted to be here to not only represent the very special place we have as a member of the Toilet Board Coalition, but obviously the family of the United Nations based in Geneva, of which WSSCC is a proud part. Because it's the moment for personal stories about India, I should perhaps also say that I feel as if I've come home a little bit. Having been immersed in the Swachh Bharat mission for 5 years of my life, I really feel as if I understand a little bit about what we should be doing about sanitation globally. But I'm pleased to hear from colleagues that work still goes on. And even though when you have huge public and political commitments, there's still much work to be done and new actors to come. So thank you, Cheryl, thank you, Erin, and thank you, colleagues, for making this possible. It's a special moment for us because we can see the new opportunities in front of us and how an organisation like ours has to shape up within the United Nations and change to understand the business of all of you. So globally, 2 billion people are still living without basic sanitation. And 3 billion lack hand-washing facilities, something as simple as that. And hundreds of millions of menstruators have no toilet to use at all, and no facilities to use either at home or in their place of work, school or health centres. The annual cost to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, of which sanitation and hygiene is a target, is 19.5 billion just to get people to basic sanitation, a basic latrine. 49 billion for safe fecal waste management per year, and another 2 billion for the forgotten hygiene. So for us, investing in sanitation is not an option, it's an absolute must. But I have to say that globally, we are still failing, and we are failing to reach those left behind. Yet, as we see an emergence of mechanisms for financing sanitation, summits like this one that are connecting vital players in the sanitation field can really help to transform the dialogue. And also to make sanitation that economic good that shifts it away from being a public service that is unaffordable and unattainable. If ever there was a moment for business opportunity, as you've said, this is one. As such, the summit can play an important role in highlighting and driving that sustainable development goal I talked about. It's something we, within the United Nations and within secretariats that support it, are actually living and breathing each day. But we're struggling for partners, and we're struggling to make sure that we understand your dialogue. So, we've heard that sanitation is an important part to harness many different goals, to get the sanitation moving, but also the other SDGs. Good for education, good for health, and we heard about working in schools with girls. But none of this is possible without good practices and good behaviours. As the Toilet Board Coalition would say, sanitation is the solution provider, and I was pleased to hear that earlier today. So the United Nations family and the governments we're working with are learning to work with you, and I think that's really important to state. These partnerships don't come easily. We come from different backgrounds, different languages, but it's really important that we move the business agenda and we move those partnerships. We can see that in the partnerships we engage with, the private sector is far more dynamic than we would have ever believed. And we've seen also that we must move beyond corporate social responsibility, which we thought it was all about, and really get into understanding the sanitation economy and what that has to bring. So the SDGs call on us to consider the interconnectedness of prosperity in business, society, and in greening the environment. We see an opportunity now to collaborate differently. The private sector is engaging in different networks to initiate and to take risks, something we're not particularly good at, and to amplify those messages and promote best practices. We as development actors must continue to explore ways to progress this. Hence collaboration and the importance of it with country governments, with civil society, and with other UN organisations beyond ourselves. This is indispensable to achieve the scale that those of you have talked about, rather than scaling up. Projects never scale, and they never fail. And what I hear tonight is about at scale, which is completely different. The Toilet Board Coalition is also a platform to talk about other things and to talk about aspects of sanitation that hitherto have been left behind. And I'm really pleased that the Toilet Board Coalition is represented on what we call the Global Menstrual Health and Hygiene Platform. That is a nascent subsector that is only beginning to be realised as a need for hundreds of millions of girls and women. We as WSSCC are happy to play our role, to understand what you are doing and to undertake joint political and policy advocacy. We undertake to disseminate the type of actions that you're engaged with ministers and local governments around the countries that we work in and around the world. To build political commitment for prioritisation and investment. Without political commitment, we see failure at scale. We also thank the Toilet Board Coalition for wanting to push that engagement at the national level. And we will serve as interlocutors as far as we can and push others to do so and get them with you as partners. India, Nepal, and other countries in South Asia are really moving the dial. But of the countries around the world where nobody is talking about sanitation, we have a responsibility to ensure that we reach those too. And I heard that India should be central to that effort, and no more so than a community like this that is brought together. According to the World Health Organization, the economic return on sanitation spending is about $5.5 for everyone spent. This represents, as you well know, one of the biggest development dividends of any intervention. And yet we still have to persuade our health colleagues that sanitation is about prevention. Sanitation makes good economic sense. You've told us that. We promise to tell others. As the government of India guides the next chapter of the Swachh Bharat mission, leaving no one behind will continue to be a focus. And this is important because sanitation should not be only for those that might have. Sanitation has to be for those who already don't have, and for the key populations that repeatedly are left behind. So we undertake to shift the norms with you and to shift the behaviours and to encourage more entrepreneurs and young people into the sanitation workforce. We at WSSCC are beginning to develop a new strategy, and for us, we will work in highest burden and least able to respond countries. And we know that the interdependent relationship on different partners has never been more critical. And that's where we look to you and many people like you. We are going to double down on the investments that we will make to actors in this field to really bring in a new dimension to the work of the United Nations and the way that the UN family funds sanitation. We're only one player, so I would like to commit you all to join us in the urgency. An urgency not just for businesses, but an urgency for the millions left behind, the hundreds of millions. Development actors with the private sector. This should be a new generation of partnerships and engagements. So as you meet and deliberate this week, I wish you well. I wish you fun in Pune. We've heard lots about it. And as my colleague Amit said in an earlier speech, stay hooked. We think it's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. WSSCC has been a key sponsor for the Toilet Board Coalition, and they've been one of our biggest supporters over the years, and we wish to thank them once again. I would also like to have on stage finally Mr. Madhu Rao. Mr. Madhu Rao is the Executive Vice President of Home and Hygiene at Unilever. Mr. Madhu Rao. Unilever has also been one of our founding members of the Toilet Board Coalition globally, and come.
Thank you, Rajeev, for that introduction, and what a privilege and an honor for me to be here with this august company. I must say that coming to Pune is always great. It's a wonderful city, and really thank the warm welcome that the leaders from Pune have given us, and to the assembly of people here today. Also, a big thank you to Tata Trust for hosting us. What a grand and historic location. Over 102 years. My goodness, you know, that is really, really special. And we couldn't have chosen a better place to talk about a topic that is really, really important in the world today. And important not just for all of us here, but for a number of stakeholders who are not here. Because I do believe that we are the change agents who can realize solutions across the globe, because all people have to come together to solve this problem. You know, when I looked at what Prabhat talked about, the grand history of the Tata Trust, very much similar to Unilever. And I also want to go back a little bit into the history of our founder, Lord William Hesketh Lever. He founded a company with a set of brands over 130 years ago. And in 1884, he introduced the biggest behavior change program in the world at that point in time in the area of hygiene and sanitation, and that is called brand Lifebuoy. Yeah? We call ourselves the fast-moving consumer goods industry, where things change, you know, brands come and go, the death rate of new launches is very high, the mortality rate, 9 out of 10 innovations die. And here we have Lifebuoy, even after 130 years, making a difference to people across the world. What is the reason why something like a Lifebuoy continues to make sense to people today? And I do believe that is really the essence of creating a movement which we call purpose. So Lord Lever, the starting point for him to solve the sanitation and the hygiene problem that he saw in the Victorian UK at that time, the starting point was purpose, and he felt passionately with a firm conviction that he had to change the world, starting with the UK, of course. So purpose drives innovation, purpose gives meaning to solving consumer problems. So I do believe that when we look at the TBC today, there is a very strong purpose that is in the right place. And under the leadership of Cheryl and the rest of the TBC, it's wonderful to see this movement grow. Unilever started as one of the founding fathers of the TBC 5 years ago. And down the road, it is amazing that this organization has grown exponentially and bringing in new energy, new members, new stakeholders on board. And I do think it has got miles to go. The problem is so big that it's always never enough to do something in full. Long way to go, but we are in the right direction. So coming back to Lord Lever and Lifebuoy, I think we have to ask ourselves the question, are we in a position to inspire purpose with all our stakeholders with an intensity that commits them to deliver their resources, their time, their energies that can help us create sustainable models? I head a division which is called the Home and Hygiene, and one of the brands that we have is called Domestos, called Domex in India. And in its own small way, it is tackling the problem of sanitation because it's a toilet care brand. And one of the reasons why this brand is very successful is the focus that it brings with purpose and on consumers. So my main thought as I speak to all of us today is consumer focus. It's important to have the purpose, but it's really, really more important to solve a friction point for the consumers. Are we, in what we are doing, solving some serious problem that the consumer is willing to pay and buy that convenience? Like the Sunlight soap that Lord Lever introduced, like the Lifebuoy. It solved problems, provided convenience, and was affordable, and that was the reason why they became movements. So what do you mean by consumer focus? I'll give you a practical example. For a number of years in the toilet care business, we believed that cleaning and getting rid of the organic dirt was the end and be all of trying to achieve results. But then we saw the shift in focus and the consumer actually telling us that it's not just about the cleaning, it's also the malodor that was a big problem. So the entire focus of everything that we did on our brand shifted to malodor. And I know Firmenich is there on the toilet board, and there's a lot of work that the Firmenich team is doing with Melinda and Bill Gates Foundation. So that is a slice of life on how it is important for us to stay close to the consumer insight, because what we believe is a problem from the consumer may not be the problem, and you need to come to it from different levers. So malodor, cleanliness, affordability, service, brand, all these can help us solve problems. Also, when we talk about consumer focus, I will give you one more slice of example that we encountered with Domestos. Now let's take India. We couldn't have chosen a better place than India to talk about the sanitation crisis in the world. And when we started marketing the Domestos brand, we found that the Modi government with the Swachh Bharat program has provided a great facilitator, 110 million toilets, wonderful. But at the same time, many of the toilets were not being used. And again, here comes the consumer insight. What is the reason? Because there are social and cultural drivers, dimensions that are impacting consumer behavior. And in this case, we found that many consumers do not want to clean the toilet because there are social issues. It is not their job to clean the toilet. It is somebody else's job to clean the toilet. So you need an intervention that can overcome that barrier and create a consumer behavior change. So that's what I mean by really being close to the consumer, because it's not just about providing a product that is going to solve the problem. You need to go one step beyond and understand the context in which the consumer is operating, and in this case, solving a social problem of not cleaning the toilets. So we created a campaign using celebrities. In India, as you know, films have a big draw. So celebrities from South India who actually willingly signed up. You would have never thought an A category celebrity from the film industry in South would volunteer to sign up to lead a campaign about toilet care, but they were so inspired by the movement and what we are trying to do, they willingly gave their time. So coming back to the consumer issue, really focusing on what is the consumer friction point and what is the cultural barrier or the social barrier that we need to solve, I do believe is also at the heart of everything that we do. We call it behavior change. Now, when we talk about really catalyzing the toilet board cohorts and the accelerator programs and creating a sustainable model, the social context becomes very important. You could have a circular sanitation model which is actually looking at making use of the toilet resources into something else, maybe as fuel or as value-added products that could be used at home. But we have to ask the question, is the consumer really going to buy them, or industries, are they really in a position to acquire them and use them? Because there could be social and cultural dimensions that could be impacting behavior at that stage. So something for us to think about is behavior change on a grand scale, and how do we inspire a lot of our stakeholders to invest in the behavior change. From Unilever, again, a lot of the learnings and the expertise that we can talk about is how do you really make behavior change possible in an organized and rigorous way, and also market it well, because it's all about building brands and using brands as a vehicle to create behavior change. And in today's age, we talk about many tools available, whether it is the digital platforms that are available or the PRM initiative that you can lead, where you can reach consumers and create change by using technology at scale, by creating talkability. So another thought as we look at what the TBC is embarking on is how do we create more talkability? How do we create more draw with the stakeholders on the work that we are doing? Can we build TBC as a power brand? Because when you have a power brand, then of course you have more of the eyeballs that will gravitate towards. But before we do that, we need to have a strong product and we need to have evidence to say that something works. Again, I want to go back and draw on some practical examples on how do we create big brands that have impact across the world. So we start small, you can talk about it in the context of a test market. So when we introduce a new product or a brand, it's usually in a limited geography where we try and get most of the things right. The product, the pricing, the distribution, the advertising, the awareness, the trial, the repeat purchases, the sampling. So we get the model right on a limited scale initially, because that's what you are creating, the feasibility model, like what the TBC is doing. But once you have a model that is proven, then you rapidly build it to scale and launch it into more markets in the same country and then take it global. So what is the magic trick, the secret sauce that helps scalability of models? I do believe it is rooted in very strong clarity about what are the KPIs that can prove that something that is being launched as a test scale is successful, and being very rigorous about it and taking action. Sometimes you can prove a test market successful in 9 months, sometimes it might take 2 years. So there is no single model that gets everything right the first time. A lot of pivoting is required, a lot of resources need to be aligned. You need to bring in a lot of expertise, and you also need to change your thinking as the model progresses. So if I'm asking the question, as the founding member of TBC, it is everybody's, I would say, role to ask the question. We have created models. What is it that we need to do to build scale now? Can we create scale with a few of the cohorts, with a few of the accelerator programs, with really rock solid evidence-based solutions that would become so clear that the investments start pouring in? Are we in a position to get into that kind of a nicety of delivering models that will inspire stakeholders to come forward and really make them scalable? So I think that's the golden standard that we need to aspire for. But I would urge all of us, including our key stakeholders, to start thinking about how can we assemble absolutely rock solid, rigorous KPIs that become so incontrovertible that they become successful models for scaling up. So that's really the thought, because it's really about now taking the progress that we have made so far and then pushing it to the next level. So that would really be the focus of our discussions on how to get really big wins in some of the cohorts that we have and make sure that they become scalable. It's not to say that everything is going to be successful. Again, from a brand lens, from having worked on innovations for many years, I can tell you that a lot of them ultimately may not prove to be viable, but that's fine as long as we take the learnings and then put them into an orbit that can help others to really become successful. So, if learning from what Rajeev is doing, we have models that are really successful. The T-Bus, as an example, is a great initiative, and I'm not surprised that he's got big wings now to fly with this business. So well done, Rajeev. That again proves the point that when you have something that is visibly successful, the stakeholders would gravitate and the scale would start coming in. So that's really the learning, and I can say that the task ahead of us is so big that we don't need just one successful story, we need many in many big markets across the world, especially in the pressure geographies. Yeah, so when we look at the world and we look at some of the geographies where we need to make a difference, of course, India, very obvious, some parts of South Asia, of course, Africa, the big league, where we need decisive intervention. So the journey continues and there are miles to go before we can say that we have done our job. It's also useful to stop at this point in time and recognize the grand work done by the TBC, because this is one solid voice that is making impact, and the way it is progressing, it is not a surprise that many of our stakeholders want to collaborate and join hands. And if you look at the marketplace today, over 40 participants, entrepreneurs who have come forward wanting to share their experience and their wares. So that's a big signal that in TBC we have a big brand. Yeah, we have a brand that has got the makings to make a difference, and that really is very heartening. And with the energy that Cheryl brings, and with the commitment that a lot of us have already displayed, and with the expanding stakeholders who want to join in, I do believe that we got something that can make a difference to the world in our own small way. But when we start thinking small and prove the model, it starts becoming big. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity and share a few thoughts, and looking forward to the next few days. I'm sure it will be a lot of fun. It'll also be, I think, the time for us to come with some path-breaking ideas and coalitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhu. Very insightful, very inspiring, and very motivating. I think all the speakers have given us a lot of food to think about, and the next 2-3 days are going to be really exciting, a lot of fun, a lot of energy. We're looking forward to a lot of interactions at the Conrad as well as at the marketplace, and we're hoping to see a lot of traction. It's like I said earlier, it's almost like a dream come true for me personally. And once again, welcome to Pune. Thank you very much. Dinner is served. Bon appetit.